Hello, and welcome to the Computing Conversations column. This column is from the February 2013 issue of IEEE Computer and is titled Mitchell Baker, the Mozilla Foundation. There is supporting video material for this column that you can find in the IEEE Computer Society YouTube channel or in the IEEE Digital Library. I'm the editor of the column, and I'm Charles Severance from the University of Michigan. The world has witnessed many watershed events in the web's evolution over the past 30 years. One of the most important was the emergence of browsers on desktop computers, signaling the migration of this technology from academia to the public sphere. Between 1994 and 1996, as commercial investment in the web technologies skyrocketed, there was a war to become the browser that would gain enough market share to set the web's technical agenda. The vendor that prevailed could expect to extract a healthy profit from the growth that everyone knew was coming. Mosaic, a free open-source browser, was developed in late 1992 at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. When the NCSA offered Macintosh and Windows versions in 1993, the commercial world took notice. From these humble beginnings, Netscape Communications Corporation emerged in early 1994. Important young engineers at NCSA, notably Mark Andreessen, were recruited to work for the new Silicon Valley company. For a while, it appeared that Netscape would not only succeed but actually dominate the market. This, of course, greatly threatened Microsoft, which led to its major investment in what would become Windows 95 and Internet Explorer. With Microsoft's entry into the marketplace, Netscape had to adjust its strategy to remain relevant, ultimately creating and funding Mozilla to develop a hybrid approach that blended open source and proprietary code. According to Baker,
the different way to compete would be by building a shared asset. Instead of Netscape versus Microsoft, that Netscape would gather contributions of volunteers and other commercial partners, and build a product that would be shared. And that group of people knew that to be open source, you had to be real. You couldn't just say, oh, we're open source, love us. You really had to manage it differently. So at the time, there were 6 or 7 or 8 of us who were employed by Netscape as Mozilla.org staff, and another 100 or 150 employed by Netscape as Netscape engineers building the Netscape product and contributing their work to the Mozilla open source project.
The technical direction of the for-profit effort changed when Netscape was sold to America Online. The browser now had to include features that would push traffic to AOL properties and benefit AOL partners. Netscape became less about building the best browser on a technical level and more about using the Netscape brand to benefit AOL. This led to friction as the Netscape browser continued to lose market share to Internet Explorer.
But we, of course, at Mozilla.org were an anomaly because our charter was to build a successful open source project. And so that worked for quite a while. There were tensions. These were the dark years for Mozilla. We came to understand we needed to rebuild our core technology. That took a long time. While we were doing that, market share continued to slide. We at Mozilla.org were convinced it wouldn't be successful, that building a product to benefit AOL only wouldn't generate the kind of interest either from individual volunteers or from commercial partners that we needed to be successful.
The long-awaited Netscape 6 eventually shipped, but the Netscape browser and brand were past the point of no return.
That was Netscape 6, universally acknowledged as a bad product and pretty universally acknowledged as the end of the Netscape product line. And the tensions continued. The management tensions continued. The failure of Netscape 6 didn't make anything easier. And certainly for the AOL folks, it really didn't make things easier either. And we fought a lot about the UI. I think UI is a constant source of tension. But in our case, it was worse because some of these fights would be, it makes sense to AOL to put something in the product, in the interface of the product, either a button to an AOL site or something that has an ad in it or some feature that a partner is paid for so it generates revenue. We think it might send people to our site. Some of our users might really like it. So it all made sense from their point of view. But if you're not building the AOL client to benefit AOL and you're trying to build an open source product that is used for many people, then of course those features are a big negative.
The Mozilla team maintained that the code base needed to remain true to building the best possible browser technology.
And we would say, no, you can't put it into the core product. You're welcome to have a build system on your own and add it in later. And that's how we ended up doing these things. So we did develop a system for it, but of course it's awkward. And you're always rubbing against what should go where. And it turned out, even in the very early days, that the open source Mozilla versions of the product got a lot more testing than the Netscape versions.
Because everyone was on the payroll of Netscape AOL, the tensions could not go on forever.
The AOL client fortunes declined, and the Netscape browser declined, and declined precipitously after this Netscape 6. And so AOL was interested in laying off people, and in one of the big layoffs I was included. And that was in 2001. And that was seen as a power struggle as well. Because by that time, the fights back and forth about what we were building and who was making decisions were pretty well known within the engineering organization. It's hard for them not to be. I mean, it's true anywhere, right? But in some cases, the fights and the bugs are all very public as well. But So I was laid off, or fired, depending on how you want to describe it. And as it turned out, it wasn't really possible to take my place. And I continued as a volunteer, and the Netscape engineering organization, it was very clear whose leadership they were most interested in following. And so we had to work out a way in which the management at Netscape AOL that remained, and I worked out sort of a way to work together enough so that they could ship the product they wanted to ship, but that I continued to lead the project.
Baker worked with the Netscape team from outside as a volunteer, and eventually a Mozilla browser shipped in 2002. It was a solid technical product, but had a very poor user experience, and thus very little uptake. To help conserve funds for the Mozilla project, Baker also worked on another open source effort with Mitch Kapor, founder of Lotus. By 2003, AOL had decided to get out of the browser business, which would ultimately lead to the end of AOL funding for the fledgling Mozilla project.
Fortunately, they knew that just killing it wasn't good. They knew enough about Mozilla and the name and the brand to think it would be good to do something with it. And so eventually, I ended up working with them, and some of the people there knew Mitch as well. And I was working with Mitch, and they knew him, and so we all, spent a chunk of time trying to figure out what was possible. And my partner Brendan was still at Netscape, very eager to make a move, and many of the key people we wanted were also desperate to keep working on Mozilla.
AOL decided to give Mozilla some money and other assets to get them started.
And so we ended up getting a $2 million seed money from AOL. And Mitch was helpful with that. And a few other things. The trademark, name Mozilla, and the 4 giant servers, which were so important to us at the time, and which had taken us almost 18 months to get through the purchase cycle at AOL. And so I think we still have those boxes sitting around because they were so important to us at the time. And so in 2003, the Mozilla Foundation was formed, and Mitch was the first chairman because he had done so much and had so much to offer. And Brian Baylendorf and guy Chris Blizzard, who worked on Mozilla forever, and Brendan and I were on the board. And AOL understood that there were 3 or 4 people that would be leaving when they did some kind of reorg, or when they closed down the client group, and that those people would be coming to join us. And of all the people that we thought would be most helpful at Mozilla, they all came.
The Mozilla Foundation started with 10 employees and enough money to last 2 years, but the browser needed major rework.
It was exciting. It's a little scary, because we knew that $2 million wouldn't go that far, and that we had a lot of work to do to make ourselves real. We were still 18 months away from shipping, 15 months away from shipping Firefox. At that time, we made what was a pretty fundamental change that was critical, and we decided unambiguously to be a consumer product. That seems obvious, but when you're a bunch of developers, it's not that easy. And it means that you have to strip out a lot of the things that are clunky for a general consumer. You really have to be determined that you're building for a general consumer, not yourself. And then we tried to figure out what to do with the start page, because we knew that Mozilla development tools weren't the right answer. And we just took us forever. And we looked at all sorts of things and finally decided the one thing we knew that everybody did was search. You know, we'd have people who say, well, it's obvious you should have the BBC, at least in English language versions. It's obvious. And then, you know, our engineering guy would look up and say, well, it's not obvious to my 17-year-old daughter that that's what she wants. It's not obvious to my son either. So, but everybody used search. So we thought, we have the search box. Maybe we should put that on the start page too. Make it easier. Maybe it'd be more obvious to people about search. So we went to talk with the search providers. We had a very fruitful discussion with Google. I think they also saw the value of having a Mozilla browser in the world. They were very explicit about that, and I believe them.
But Baker didn't want to establish an exclusive relationship with a single partner, so she insisted that Yahoo would be one of the search options in addition to Google Search.
We did something that I believe had never been done before, which was to make sure that Google and Yahoo were right there next to each other. Like, you don't see them next to each other. You have to click on the arrow, but they're there. And today people laugh at me when I say that, because you only see one. But I negotiated that. And that was an absolute, utter, I will walk away from the deal term to everyone. Because I don't think I'd ever seen it before. And I wasn't, you know, if you get on a plane and you want a Diet Coke, but the plane only has Diet Pepsi because that's their deal, you're angry. And if you want a Diet Pepsi and you want a Coke, and I used that example. I said, I'm not going to have Firefox users angry at us because they wanted one or the other. You know, you have to agree. You're both going to be in the product.
The Mozilla project valued openness and inclusion as core values. Team members knew that it was important to retain real independence from any single corporate entity, even if it meant failing financially. Near the end of 2004, the rewrite that was initially named Phoenix and later called Firefox finally shipped with a Google Yahoo search box.
We'd seen a rise in interest from 0.8 and 0.9 that was pretty noticeable, but once we hit the release version, it just exploded. And part of that was it was the perfect product. This time we had a product at the right time in the market. You know, internet capabilities had grown enough. People could actually download a browser easily, and more people had bandwidth and ability to do so and a comfort level to try it. So that was good. We had a beautiful product. And it was an important product, and the alternative was horrendous and dangerous and awful. And so all of that combined to create this giant excitement. And so Firefox market share climbed by, a percentage point immediately and started moving in these huge numbers. So it was a completely viral storm with nothing driving it other than, the product and the need itself. And so that took everyone by surprise. We were hoping to be able to generate a few $1 million to support ourselves for the next year. We had 10 or 11 employees. You start to add that up. So we were hoping to make enough money to do that. And it turned out, we generated that amount of money before the end of the year, the 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was before the end of the year.
With the right product at the right time and a solid business model that brought in far more revenue than the minimum they needed to survive, Mozilla began the next chapter of its existence.
Actually, things got even more stressful and more hectic at that point, because now you've kind of got the proverbial tiger by the tail. We're still 12 people, right? So that immediate need to grow and the sense of pressure and stress combined with elation and success is probably, I don't know, maybe it's like having a child, right? But it's that combination. Doesn't immediately get easier.
It was a little easier to be anonymous and nervous.
Yes, that's for sure. We certainly see that. And, by the end of 2004, it was pretty clear that we were a different organization. We were, I would say, still struggling with a different set of problems, but we had changed the nature of the problems really quite fundamentally. And, we'd done so in a way that our users loved. By 2005, we were in a really different world where we began to be able to actually influence others. And that's always been the goal. I mean, market share is nice, and it's nice when people love your product. Right? Market share is a validation that you've produced the right thing. And so that's awesome on its own. But the more important, maybe not more important, equally important goal is to be able to influence not only ourselves but others in the industry so that we start to see more of the things that we care about.
The modern web owes a debt of gratitude to the people involved in the Mozilla efforts since 1998. These people held true to their principles when things seemed bleak and continued to work on a free and open product that they believed we all needed. Regardless of what browser we use today on our personal computers or handheld devices, we continue to need the Mozilla Foundation and what it represents. This column is from the February 2013 issue of IEEE Computer and is titled Mitchell Baker, the Mozilla Foundation. There is supporting video material for this column that you can find in the IEEE Computer Society YouTube channel or in the IEEE Digital Library. I'm the editor of the column, and I'm Charles Severance from the University of Michigan.